I am Jasmine Adams, and I founded CareerConvos in order to have career convos with you about getting you paid and getting your dream career. Today, we are talking about the top 10 most common questions people have about negotiations. Now, as your expert negotiation coach, I am here to give you the tips and tricks to help you get paid. Now, the very first question I always get is, how do I know my worth in the job market? Listen, you always have to do your research. That is absolutely step one. But when you research, you want to benchmark. So you can use tools like Glassdoor, PayScale, LinkedIn Salary Insights, or industry-specific reports. All of these will give you helpful information. However, you need to compare the data that you see from those reports and connect that to your location, your years of experience, your type of experience, the company size, and even if the company is public, private, a nonprofit, government, right? Because all of those companies may have the same type of role, for example, an IT manager, but a small nonprofit is going to pay an IT manager a different salary than what a large public company will pay. The second tip I'll say is ask your peers or professional mentors in your network for insights on compensation expectations and trends. Now, tip, you're not asking them how much they make. No. You are just asking them, what are trends in the industry? What are compensation ranges that you can expect for either this type of role or working at this company or for this type of position? The last tip that I'll say to the question of how do I know my worth in the job market is once you do your benchmarking to understand what the salary ranges are, then highlight your unique skills or certifications that help set you apart and help you justify the range that you're looking for your salary. The second question I often get around salary and compensation negotiation is, when is the right time to bring up salary in the hiring process? Now, this is for those of you who are out in the industry interviewing for a new job. So typically some people will say, wait for the employer to bring it up, but I will actually offer some different advice. Typically, you will have what is called a screening conversation with a recruiter. In that screening conversation, the recruiter is going to say, tell me about your experience. Where do you live? When can you start? It's just a couple of foundational questions. If that recruiter does not say, what is your compensation expectation? If you have done your research, and only if you have done your research, you should bring it up to say, can we talk about the compensation expectations for this role? So when you bring up, can we talk about the compensation expectations, be prepared to offer a salary range based on the research that you have done. Now, if you are not comfortable offering a range, you can say, I'd like to learn more about the role and responsibilities before discussing specific numbers. This will allow you to have a couple of interviews, learn more about the scope of the role, the demands of the role, and frankly, how the company supports its employees before being able to give a number. So you can avoid volunteering salary expectations too soon to maintain leverage if you are not comfortable or if the research that you have done has not given you the information you think is most helpful to make sure that you are negotiating your worth. The third question I often get when negotiating compensation is, how do I handle the question that says, what's your current salary or what's your expected salary? Now, I talked a little bit about this in the previous question, but let's go deeper. So if you are asked, what is your current salary? You can deflect and say something like, I'm focused on the value I bring to this role and the market rate rather than my previous salary. Now, that does a couple of things for you. That focuses the salary range on, what did I say? The market rate. We are talking about the fair pay for the job in the market, regardless of who is in that position. Therefore, it removes any bias that may be tied to you because of your sex, your race, your potential disability, anything like that. Now, if you want to talk about the expected salary, you can provide a research range and frame it as flexible. So, for example, based on my research, I believe a salary between X dollars and Y dollars is fair for this role and aligns with my skills and experience. Therefore, you are helping to set the expectation of what your expected compensation is. Now, here's a pro tip for you. In states or regions where it's illegal to ask about current salary, remind the employer of the regulation if needed. Now, an addendum to that question that I also receive is, well, how do I know that I'm in the state or region where it's illegal to ask that question, Jasmine? Here's a rule I typically use. If the organization is a large organization and operates nationally, more than likely they know not to ask that question because you might be located in one city, but your headquarters or the office that you may be mapped to may be located somewhere else that may have that legislation. Therefore, if you're not sure what the rules are, you can defer back to what I said earlier and just focus on saying, I want to make sure that my compensation reflects the fair market pay for this job. Let me learn more about the position, and then we can talk about my expected compensation. The fourth question that I get when people are negotiating their salary and coming to me for advice is, how do I negotiate when the company says the salary is non-negotiable? Look, we are in a very difficult economy, and yes, companies do say that sometimes. Here are a couple of tips that I recommend. You can ask if there are other forms of compensation, such as signing bonuses, stock options, negotiating PTO. Another tip is that you can highlight specific skills or accomplishments that help to justify the reconsideration. So you can say, I understand the stated range, but based on my track record in X, it might be sales, it might be managing a team, etc., getting a project off the ground, would it be possible to revisit the offer? If they remain firm, assess whether the role's other benefits, whether it's career growth, flexibility, and more, align with your priorities. Okay, the fifth question that I often get when helping clients negotiate their compensation is, what should I do if I'm offered a salary that is lower than expected? Let me tell you guys, this happens often. So the first is always starting with gratitude. A lot of my clients are really nervous about seeming greedy or aggressive. And so if you remain in a place of comfort and gratitude when you're responding, that always helps with the tone of the conversation. So you can express gratitude and also signal disappointment at the same time. Two things can be true at the same time. A way that you can respond is saying, thank you so much for this offer. I am very excited about the opportunity, but I will be honest, the salary is a little lower than I had anticipated based on, and then name a specific reason. You can talk about your market research, you can talk about specific types of experience, etc. And then from there, propose or counteroffer with the justification. You can say, I was expecting closer to X number, and that is based on experience, research, data that you have, and the value that you can bring to the team. In this moment, two things are true. One, a pregnant pause is really impactful. That means state your position and be quiet. Pregnant pause. Let it be. Let it hang in the room. You do not have to fill the silence. The second thing is stay calm and professional and be prepared to discuss your value further. The sixth question that I often get when helping clients negotiate their salary is, how do I negotiate as a freelancer or a gig worker? In this day and age, in this economy, a W-2 job may not always be the end-all be-all. Or you have a W-2 job and you're a freelancer or a gig worker. Look, we are all out here trying to make ends meet, so I get it. Negotiating your compensation is complex. And when you think about pay, not based on an annual basis, you have to consider what is the right compensation package for a certain amount of time, or based on a freelancer or gig economy worker. So your prices for your services should be based on time, your expertise, and the project value. So you can use tools like Bonsai or Freelance Rate Calculator to help set competitive rates. You can also do research. For example, you can go to pages like Fiverr and other marketplaces where you can see people who are doing similar work to you and see what rates that they are setting. Once you clearly define your project scope, the deliverables, and the payment terms in writing, then that's when you can move forward. Be prepared to counter low offers with a breakdown of how your rate aligns to the quality and the impact of your work. So, for example, for the scope you've described, my standard rate is X dollars because it includes bam, 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 bam. List those specific services and skills. Do not be afraid to demonstrate your value to the client. The seventh question that I typically receive from clients negotiating their salary and/or compensation is, what are some non-monetary benefits that I can negotiate? Here is the kicker. Most people don't even think about money beyond the base salary or the bonus, but there are so many non-monetary benefits. Let's talk about a couple. So common negotiation perks include things that are connected to like work-life balance. So things that, frankly, we might not have thought much about before the pandemic are almost standard now in negotiation conversations. That would include flexible work hours, remote work, a 4-day work week. You can also think about professional growth opportunities. So that could be access to a conference, that could be access to a specific project, that could be access to a mentor or a leader in the organization that you get to work under, tuition reimbursement, or money for certain trainings or certifications. All of those tied to your professional growth in the long term could really make a difference in your earning potential. There could also be other ones around health and wellness. That could include gym memberships, mental health support, or wellness stipends. Also family benefits. I am a mom of twins, so the dependent care coverage is clutch for me. But that could include family benefits like parental leave, childcare stipends, elder care support, or even legal or financial coaching. So overall, when you're negotiating, frame it as a mutual benefit. So you can say, when you're thinking about non-monetary benefits, would it be possible to adjust my schedule to start earlier in exchange for finishing earlier? This flexibility would enhance my productivity and my work-life balance and get you the results that you want faster. It's all about framing, guys. How can we make this a win-win negotiation? The eighth question that I receive from clients when negotiating a salary is, how can I negotiate for a raise or promotion at my current job? Now, we know companies are out here struggling and the job cuts are rampant. So this has a couple of different considerations. The very first consideration is timing. Timing is key. This is what I like to tell my clients. When your children come to you for a holiday that includes presents, whether it's a birthday or Christmas, whenever that might be, and they want something specific, does it make sense for them to open up the present you got, say, this isn't what I want, and then ask you for something different? Or does it make sense for them to come to you ahead of time and say, parent, mommy, daddy, grandparent, auntie, uncle, whoever, this is what I would like? Okay, same thing in business. Timing is key. You want to plan your discussion, and you want to plan it around times where you have had a successful project or a successful annual performance review. Therefore, your success is top of mind. So you can build your case in preparation for this conversation. That means documenting your accomplishments. One thing I always did was keep an accolades folder in my email inbox. Every time I got any type of positive feedback or comment, I would put it in there because guess what? Who remembers that from 7 months ago? So go to your accolades folder, pull out those accomplishments. In addition to building your case, you want to include measurable results and added responsibilities. Who is not out here doing everybody else's job plus yours? All companies are saying, can we do more with less? We just cut 3 people, but we're not going to replace them. Let's keep on moving. That is hard, but it is a case for an increase in your base salary or a promotion. You also want to use data trends so you can reference research that you've done with salary benchmarks for similar roles in your industry. So for example, you can say something like, in the past year, I've taken on X, Y, and Z tasks that have resulted in measurable outcomes, not outcomes, measurable outcomes. That means put metrics to the outcomes that you've accomplished. Then say, based on my contributions and my market research, I like to discuss a salary adjustment to X dollars. The 9th question that I typically get from clients when negotiating salary is, what should I do if the employer rescinds an offer after I negotiate? You guys, this has happened. Now, it is very few and far between, but it has happened. And guess what? One of the reasons why I became a salary negotiation coach is because it happened to me. And I'm the best. I'm an expert. So this does not exclude you from positive and negative experiences in this. But the point is, negotiate and negotiate often. The more you practice, the better that you will become. Okay. So how do you respond to a situation like that? This is rare, but it can happen. So keep a positive tone. You can say something like, I'm disappointed to hear that as I was excited about the role. If circumstances change, I'd be happy to revisit the conversation. Sometimes it happens, but here's how you can avoid the scenario. You can approach negotiations collaboratively rather than combatively, showing enthusiasm for the role while advocating for your needs. 2 things can be true at the same time, I promise you. And then also have backup opportunities or solid plan B to ensure that you're not reliant on one offer. It is really disappointing when that happens, but also revisit the process that you went through, the conversation, and identify what may have gone wrong so you don't make this mistake again. The 10th and final question I get when helping clients negotiate their salary and/or compensation is, how do I handle counter offers from my current employer when I'm considering leaving? So the first question is, do you really want to leave, or are you using this as a bargaining chip? You have to make that decision before you enter into any conversation. So this is what I would tell you. Evaluate the counter offer carefully. One of the solutions that I offer in my salary negotiation coaching is a standalone job offer evaluation service. It's really important to go through each of the deal points to understand what you are gaining and or potentially leaving on the table. So consider if the offer addresses reasons you wanted to leave. For example, culture, growth opportunities, things that are outside of pay, or if it's just about compensation. So you want to ask clarifying questions. Things like, what changes are being made to ensure I'll have long-term growth here? Because let's be clear, companies offer LTI, long-term incentive, but are you actually going to be there long enough to get that incentive? We don't know these days because cuts are happening left and right. So if you want to be there long-term, ask the hard questions. You can also decide to decline and be gracious. You can say, I'm grateful for the counteroffer, but I've decided to pursue this new opportunity as it aligns better with my career goals. At the end of the day, you have to weigh all of the options, not just the financial benefits, to make sure that your next role is your best role.